I wouldn't say that he was begging us, but what is a step before begging?
No, I know, but if the Prime Minister is asking and you're essentially saying we don't want to do that, are you concerned about that relationship in terms of the bigger picture and the collaborative work you're involved with the Prime Minister in right now?
No.
Canoe says Mark Carney stopped just short of begging the premiers to make concessions to help secure his trade deal with Donald Trump. But Carney may have a much bigger political problem. A new Leger poll finds 56% of Canadians want no further concessions, while 47% say a trade deal should trigger a federal election so Canadians can have their say. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard to see where I'm coming from. I'm skeptical. I'm not, going to cheerlead things here, but at the same time, yeah, that's where we stand today.
What detail is still waiting to find out?
What is the rate of tariff on steel? What are the rates on aluminum? And pretty much anything that hasn't been leaked by the federal government to you, the media, so far, I would say.
They haven't told you anything about that?
Any other questions?
But you were briefed, but what were you told? You must have asked.
I was told by the Prime Minister that he wants us to put the booze back on the shelves.
Without giving you details?
They gave us some details, and other stuff they said they're still nailing down. So I wouldn't say that he was begging us, but what is a step before begging? So I get it from his perspective. Why does he want us to take the booze off the shelves? He's the one who got on the phone with Donald Trump, which, I don't think any of us want to be on the phone with Trump or in a photo with him. But there you go. Somebody has to do it. Thank you, Mark Carney, for doing it. And you can understand he got to a place where he can recommend a deal to Canadians. But I think for the rest of us, okay.
Is the Prime Minister saying to the provinces, if you don't put the booze back on the shelves, we won't have a signed deal by the end of the week?
Yeah, effectively. Yeah.
It sounds like you're not enthused at the process.
That's right.
Of putting the booze back into the shelves. But you
Leave it there is when we put the American booze back on the liquor mart shelves, Canadians, leave it there. Spend your money on Canadian products that are going to employ people in our country and that have an administration that respects Canada.
This morning on CJOB, you said that if you were in charge of the country, you would fight more.
Yes.
Are you dissatisfied with Carney's negotiations?
I think I've shared a very clear message with you all here today that I'd like you to print and run on your respective broadcasts.
How quickly can you get alcohol back on the shelves?
We can do it relatively quickly. Like, you're not going to see the full catalog, if you will, because labeling, for instance, they need to print labels with French on it. That'll take a few weeks. So it might take a few weeks for everything, but if we decide to move ahead, we could do that relatively quickly.
Do you expect
Within a day or something? Or?
Within a few days, I'd say.
Do you expect ultimately? Yeah. Sorry. Do you expect ultimately that will be the decision that's made when a deal is potentially reached? That ultimately you will be putting the U.S. because it sounds like you're saying that you are preparing to do this eventually. You're just kind of waiting until the deal is right for you.
No, the deal will not be right for me, I would expect. But it's not about me. It's about Team Canada. What we've been saying for the past year and a half since all this tariff nonsense started. So my choice, whatever. Your choice is the most important thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Premier of Manitoba, Canoe. So very interesting watching him in this presser. You can tell he's very annoyed just by his body language and how he's kind of smiling the whole time. He's not smiling because he's happy. He's smiling because he's sitting there saying, I can't believe I have to do this. I can't believe I'm being put in this position to do this. That's the angle that I'm getting from him. And he has said that he thinks Mark Carney should be fighting harder. And the fact that he said that Mark Carney basically just stopped short of begging the premiers to put this alcohol back on the shelves. And I know I said yesterday I kept mischaracterizing David Eby. So that's the correction for today on that. To put the alcohol back on the shelves that was taken off. It's interesting that he's calling that out in the public. And he also said some interesting things about the Americans and Donald Trump. And, you know, while many people may agree that they're correct, and again, I think most of us, again, it goes without saying, we don't want tariffs on Canada. We don't think there should be tariffs on Canada. It's hurting Canada to put tariffs on there. Don't agree with Donald Trump putting tariffs on Canada. But this is where we're at in terms of the politicians just getting frustrated. And the Americans are watching this, and this actually might hurt the deal. That's not me saying it. That's other folks saying this. And these are folks that are on the special committee that Mark Carney set up. But I got to say, you know, I wouldn't vote for Bob Canoe, but at least he's giving straight answers, right? So I got to give credit where credit's due. He's giving yes or no answers. He's saying, it is the impression that if we don't put the booze back on the shelves, that there's going to be no trade deal. And he's like, yep. So credit where credit's due. He's not giving these long waffling answers that go nowhere like Mark Carney does. So, you know, for those folks that are in Manitoba, at least, well, I don't know how Wab Canoe is most of the time in terms of the provincial politics, but at least here, he's giving straight answers. And it doesn't look good for Mark Carney, the way he's characterizing his answers.
Sorry, the Prime Minister, were you told to, were you given permission from the Prime Minister, to like blame him
Yes.
in case alcohol goes back? Are you okay with that?
He's the one who wants the booze back on the shelves. I think it's pretty clear what we would do here in Manitoba were it not for the fact we're part of Team Canada and we want to work together with the Prime Minister, who I fully respect is the one standing up for Canada and is the one on the phone with President Trump. So I do feel that we have to respect that. But at the same time, do we have to go out and say this is the best deal ever? Do we have to cheerlead? Do we have to play to Donald Trump's ego? No, I don't think we do. I think we should point out how irresponsible he is along the way. And I think we should continue focusing on supporting Canadian products. So if you do see the American booze on the shelves, leave it there.
Premier, it seems like you've had a pretty good relationship with the Prime Minister. Since he came into office, he's been very supportive of development in Churchill, for example. Does it concern you at all to kind of go against his wishes and jeopardize that relationship?
Well, the booze might go back on the shelves. I'm just telling you to not buy it.
No, I know, but if the Prime Minister is asking and you're essentially saying we don't want to do that, are you concerned about that relationship in terms of the bigger picture and the collaborative work you're involved with the Prime Minister in right now?
No.
Wow. Okay. It's the first time I saw that part of the presser. The other media organizations out there, like CBC and CT, like they're not showing that part. They're only showing the initial part. Are you concerned about this relationship with the Prime Minister, given that this is what you're talking about? Nope. Wow. I wouldn't vote for him, but I respect him. I respect him for being straight. And I respect him for standing up for what he thinks his constituents in his province want. How can you not respect that? I wouldn't vote for him, but I respect it. He's not happy, folks. He is really, really, really not happy. So much for Mark Carney telling everybody that the premiers are all aligned and rowing in the same direction, right? Wow. Wow, wow, wow. This is going to be fascinating to see how this kind of plays out over the next 48 hours. Remember, deadline is tomorrow, folks. Or rather, tonight, 12:01. So we'll see what happens. But that's fascinating to see Wab Canoe's reaction to this. Now let's get to this clip in CBC, because this is the premiers. and he's saying this is not a good deal. I'm not going to cheerlead it, despite what the other premiers are talking about. So obviously this deal may be okay or not affect some of the provinces, while it's going to affect a lot of others. We know that softwood lumber is basically off the table. So BC's not going to be happy about this. Manitoba's obviously not happy about this. Doug Ford has been interestingly silent about all of this. So, but this is CBC talking to a former advisor to Liberal Prime Minister Paul Martin, and then going over to Conservative Lisa Rae. Check out the contrast here and who agrees with Wab Canoe.
Based on what little we know about this supposed deal, is it sounding like a win for Canada?
Well, listen, I have no doubt, and I go back to what the Prime Minister said from the beginning. He has no interest in signing a deal that's bad for Canada, and he would rather have no deal than a bad deal. And so I think that they are doing all of the analysis, and now it's very deep into the detailed work, I'm sure, on every single product and every derivative of every product, to try and make sure that that the Canadian jobs are protected, and having to do that very, very delicate balance across a whole lot of industries and a whole lot of interests, and trying to just keep our own economic sovereignty and our economic future at hand. It's a very tough decision. I think we all know it's not going to be as good as it was, right? Mr. Trump has upended world order, and he is a man who is bound and determined for Americans to pay more for the goods that they consume. And his tariff policy, he doesn't care how that impacts Americans, and that's going to become a part of our lives going forward. And so, I think it's about minimizing risk, and again, just grinding and trying to make sure that we can do the best we can for the most people that we can.
Fascinating answer to, do you think this is a good deal? She didn't say yes. What she invokes is, well, Mark Carney said that he would never sign a bad deal, trying to imply to Canadians, so if he signs a deal, it's not a bad deal, and just trust him. Trust him that it's a good deal. That's the implication that she's wanting Canadians to fill in the blanks here. And this is what they do. This is what commentators commonly operate as when they get on these panels. They frame something to a point, and they're hoping Canadians will fill in the blanks to kind of create their own positive narrative of what they want to happen in this situation. So the fact that she wouldn't say that yes, this is going to be a good deal, never mind the fact that the details haven't even been released yet, other than these leaks that we're getting, I think that says volumes of what she actually thinks. And the fact that she says, well, Mark Carney said that he'd never sign a bad deal, that doesn't say anything. Mark Carney said that this was going to be done by July last year, and it wasn't. He said it was going to be done by August last year, and then it wasn't. He said he would get a better deal than Kuzma. But she just said that it's not going to be as good as it once was. Well, Mark Carney said that it was going to be better than it once was. So, I'm sorry, when you say Mark Carney says something and I'm going to believe it, Canadians have no reason to do so. He's almost as bad as Donald Trump in saying he's going to do something and does something else.
Lisa, there's been a few little leaks, mostly of what seems to be on surface positive. The idea that sectoral tariffs will be coming down, auto sector tariffs are coming down. Whether it's enough or not, that's a separate argument.
I disagree, CBC. That's actually the most important argument, is how much they come down. So the fact that you're trying to frame to Canadians, well, they're coming down. They're coming down. Good job, Mark Carney. But, how much they come down, that's a different discussion. No, that's actually the discussion. Ask all the mold, tool, and die makers if that's the discussion or if it's beside the point. Ask the manufacturers. Ask the softwood lumber and forestry industry in Canada. Ask them. Because it doesn't sound like they're going to get any tariff relief whatsoever. So yeah, it actually does matter how much they come down. Ask the auto industry experts who are saying that what's being reported, and then again today, that it's only coming down to 15%. That could lead to a lot of plant closures, or virtually every plant closure in Canada when it comes to car manufacturers. And if that's the case, they're all going to the US, and all of those jobs are going to be lost. So, yes, absolutely, it is the main point, but continue on.
Or issue. But should the government be preparing Canadians for the kind of concessions that had to be made to get this deal? And should Canadians be bracing for that?
So I don't believe that anybody should be talking about the content of the deal until the deal is signed. I'm going to pick up on something that Michelle said, and I agree with her that the Prime Minister has said in the past that no deal is better than a bad deal for Canada. I would submit, though, that what changed the game significantly was the Section 338 tariff threat of 50% on a wide variety but highly impactful group of industries in this country that would have a serious impact on jobs almost instantaneously. Once those things were put in the window, I really think Canada had no choice but to try to figure out a way to prevent those from biting, but at the same time, work on some of those other sectoral tariffs that have been very disturbing for us here, steel, auto, aluminum. And I think that's what they're doing at the table right now. When they have concluded a final deal, then they'll come out and they'll brief everybody. I think the only reason why the premiers, quite frankly, have been brought into the fold is because one of the prerequisites to such a deal is booze back on the shelves, provincial procurement rules, including the United States, again, and having some leeway on dairy. That's why there's actually discussions around it. Otherwise, it would have been a signed deal and you would have been briefed on it after it was done.
So Lisa's saying, listen, don't be trying to frame this as a good deal. Nothing's signed yet. And there's all these concessions that have been made. And the only reason we're in this position talking to the Americans like this is because of these 338 50% tariffs that the US put on us. That's it. Forced Mark Carney to actually wake up and pay attention. Mark Carney's strategy seems to have been the waiting game and have Donald Trump under pressure. Well, that backfired on him, and it put him in a checkmate position where he's now in this position. So we are not in any sort of position of strength when it comes to this, because Mark Carney has eliminated all of these points of leverage over the course of the last year. He said he's not going to use oil and gas as a lever on this. And it doesn't sound like he's even using critical minerals. It's just US demands it, and are we going to say yes or no? Now, for the sake of Canadians and Canada, I hope that Mark Carney gets a good deal. But how can you effectively be in a position where you can get a good deal when you have a gun to your head? And the gun to your head is the 50% tariffs. But this is the position that the Liberal government has put us in after 11 years. This didn't start, a year ago. Donald Trump still probably would have done this, regardless. But we would have been in a much better position to deal with it and push back. But because there's been a stranglehold on our resources and a stranglehold on our industries, this is where we're at. So I hope Canadians are bracing for this, because I don't think we're going to get a great deal. And the interesting thing is Leger put out a poll on Wednesday. And this is the interesting aspect of the results of this poll. Mark Carney, he's in for it. So in the Leger poll, they asked the question, based on what you have read, heard, or seen, which of the following descriptions best describes how you feel the Prime Minister Carney and the Government of Canada has approached negotiations in a new trade deal with the United States? 38% has said the government has been quite passive, making some concessions, and 30% said the government has been balanced in its approach. The problem is these are kind of vague answers, right? But the fact that 38% still said that they've been pretty passive and making concessions. That's significant. What's also significant is that it says the Canadian government has been quite aggressive standing up to the US. Only 15% of people have said that. And that's probably one of the more direct suggestions for an answer here. And that's clear. And the fact that only 15% of Canadians said that. And that makes this result even more important. In your opinion, how would you like the government of Canada to approach the negotiations with the United States? 56% of Canadians are saying take a hard line and make no more concessions. So the fact that only 15% of people in the last slide have said that the Carney government has not, or has been aggressive, only 15% has said that, and that the Carney government is standing up to Donald Trump, this is significant when 56% of Canadians are saying no more concessions. And this is the most interesting result of all. So this is asking Canadians, if a new trade deal between Canada and the United States is reached, do you feel there should be a general federal election to allow Canadians an opportunity to voice their opinion about the deal? 47% of Canadians are saying yes. That is interesting, folks. And 18% say, I don't know. So maybe, maybe not. And only 35% of Canadians are saying no. And to break that down, we have this data. So not surprising, 67% of respondents who are conservative voters had said yes. 34% of Liberals have also said yes. That is very interesting to me as well, folks. 45% NDP, 51% of Bloc, and 56% of Greens. So in general, there's a large amount of the population that says that we should be having an election to effectively judge Mark Carney on how this deal went. It's an interesting question, and I think it's a good one. We've been asked, do you think Mark Carney will call an election after the trade deal? But we haven't been asked this question, and this is a really good one. It's almost like, should the Canadian population get to grade the Liberal government and Mark Carney on whether he got a good deal? It is the question that he posed to the electorate, and he tried to make that the ballot box question, and he did. Who is best to deal with Donald Trump? Well, based on what we're hearing from Canoe, based on all of the information that we're getting from the reporting out there, the information that we're hearing from the auto industry, and all of the other information that we're getting, Mark Carney may not want an election to actually decide that question, because I think he knows darn well that all of the promises that he made to Canadians on being able to get a great deal, a better deal than Kuzma with Donald Trump, that was all smoke and mirrors. And I think Canadians are going to be seeing exactly how much he blustered and flat out lied to Canadians about his capabilities very, very soon.